This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world.
We've kind of come to a structure here on the map. What we go through is 6 bullet points. We start with general feelings of the week, how we're Matt and Michael feeling as the entrepreneur roller coaster kind of rolls on, if you will. We're going to cover how we're feeling this week. Next is sales and marketing, what's moving through the pipeline, what's not moving through the pipeline, what we think we need to do better. Engineering and R&D, talking about the ideas we have, the ones we have to choose to kill, if you will, and or keep going. Then it's company-wide updates and improvements. Everybody's liking talking about lean and how you're making your business more efficient. So we're talking about culture to the processes on the floor. And then what have we been Googling? And lastly, a little bit about Matt and Michael so you can learn about us as a human as well.
Cool. Should I start with general feelings for the week?
Sounds great to me.
I would say a little bit frustrated.
Okay.
So I think we talked about how I was going to do the first conveyor install, which I think rightfully pushed back a little bit. I think that was the right choice, given that there's enough stuff that could go wrong, and it's the first version of this rev. I really want to nail down the process and figure out kind of the things that I don't know about the install. And I guess I've just been frustrated by the various things that kind of always go wrong on installs. The biggest was that the shipping was supposed to come on Friday, and then it was supposed to come on Monday, and then it was supposed to come on Tuesday. And, we finally got it here on Thursday. And it was bad enough that the owner of the company that the conveyor was going to decided just to drive down to the yard and load it in his truck.
Okay. So you were just sitting around there for X number of days?
So, there was some stuff that I could do. But, I flew in Tuesday morning. I was supposed to already be doing the install. And I, ended up not even going until Wednesday. Okay. And only spending half the day Wednesday to prep the machine. And
so is it only you there, or do you have a team member with you?
It's only me.
Okay.
So I don't think the conveyor install really justifies a second person. I'm trying to find all the little issues, document all the little things that can go wrong. We found, for instance, that the UMC 500 has a slight variation, so I had to modify a little component for our internal rotary union. Little things like that I've been kind of finding, but generally, I guess with installs, it's always you're dealing with whatever frustrating thing doesn't go to plan.
Exactly. From my experience, still kind of going back to what I believe I said last time this kind of came up, was the reason I said, not doing all of it is the other thing is if you overstaff is what I've seen for these initial installs or just customer installs, what it creates is the opportunity for you to be standing back watching the team's pains. And then my favorite is kind of that PR aspect of it. You can continue to work with the end customer or talk about other areas that they want to automate in their facilities. So you can be focusing on upselling and then major troubleshooting if the team has it. Basically watching out if there's going to be an expensive mistake, if you will, but letting the team handle it. That's what I've seen work really well for our installs. Because I like being able to just talk about the next projects, if you will, and that's what creates the best opportunity. Because you're already there, you're on site, they're putting you behind the scenes, they're giving you all the attention they're ever going to give you.
Yeah, I guess my perspective might differ a bit, and I think it might be one of those things of just that comes down to the cost of the project.
Yeah, it does make a difference.
When the projects are $40,000 and we plan on $4,000 to $6,000 being the labor there for the install. At least my mindset's kind of like get in, get it done right, get out. And I definitely want to take that time, but at the same time, I want to get back to that. Might be an issue of the fact that I'm doing it right rather than having a staff member do it.
Yeah, I've started looking at it as Matt's time isn't billable time anymore. It's how do I focus on the business. So while, yes, I'm there, my time doesn't get billed to that customer. Right. It's more or less I'll bill it to sales or marketing aspects and then focus on those items while I'm there. That's been the way I've kind of looked at it, is that project shouldn't be the burden of me coming in anymore because the team's really handling it and I am an extra body there at that point. But that is my perspective. It is a little bit different on cost basis. So that'd be some economics you'd probably have to run yourself.
Yeah. What about you? What about general feelings for the week?
A little bit tired. This today. We did poker night last night, and we ended up staying here way later than anticipated. So I didn't get home till a little after 9. And so we were playing poker from 4 to 9 as a team. It was the team's been wanting to do more like team building or cultural events, if you will. And one of the team members wanted us to do poker, and so the goal of it was, the win was you got a $100 gift card and you got $400 towards merch, because our team really struggles to pick out what apparel to get next.
Sure.
So are we getting hats, we getting shirts, and then we end up just not getting anything because we just can't decide what we want other than polos and t-shirts. So that was the goal of it, is get somebody to make that decision then. And then
Cool.
that actually backfired because I ended up winning, and then the decision's back on me, which is what I was trying to avoid.
Well, you got to make it.
I know. So that's what's up for
Yeah.
me. A little tired today.
Any
but
general feelings about develop and kind of the state of things right now?
general feelings for develop is it really just, and I'll get into this more on like the company-wide updates and improvements. It just seems like we're chugging along is the wrong word, but it seems like we're hitting a stride or some flow here where
Yep.
it's really focusing on not major improvements, which I think I'll save that for a little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, should we go to the
is,
next section?
yeah, sales and marketing. I can roll right into that one right away because
Yeah, go for it.
I love sales and marketing. Uh, 3 leads on the website this week, which is back on track to kind of where we want our website, kicking out leads. We'll see if we can do that 2 weeks in a row. I mean, we've seen more than 3 leads come in this week, 3 that match our quality metrics is what I'm meaning by that. So
Right.
really happy about that. And then we're going to be dropping a case study on the website that's been like 6 months in the making, or 10 years if you kind of want to zoom out on develop as a whole. We've never had a case study like this. This is actually an example of, when we did a site install, we flew down a videographer. We videotaped on site for the site acceptance testing. We videotaped when that customer was up here for factory acceptance testing. We videotaped this entire machine throughout its design to build.
Yep.
So it ended up turning into like a 6-minute documentary, and it's amazing. Like, I'm
Is
so
this the
happy.
Electron one?
It is, yes. Yep. So I'm super happy to get that one pushed out there so the team can see that case study where it's extrusion processing machine and really just chugging out parts. So you must have seen it already.
Well, I saw it pop up on my YouTube feed, and then 3 minutes before the podcast, so I didn't watch it. But
Okay. Yeah. Watch it and give some honest feedback on it, because this is our first take at doing a video like this, and we're hoping it takes off well.
yeah,
That's been my sales and marketing. I realize I'm kind of cruising through my stuff this week, but
yeah.
let's hear what happened in your sales and marketing.
So I've been kind of looking into all of our ad performance. The first thing that we've seen is our meta ads have just tanked in performance recently, and I mean tanked. Where we were talking, depending on the ad, like 2 to 3.5 return on ad spend, down to like 0.5, where 0.25 or 0.
Do you feel like this is a curve of like, once you turn, like you didn't run meta ads for X number of time, you turn it back on, and it's like all of a sudden the algorithm performs it's really well for you, and then it just drops back off really quickly? Like, it almost seems like that's
Right.
baked into the algorithm, or is that just me? Because every time I ran it, it's like I have an awesome week, and then it's never repeatable.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that where, like, when you start an ad, it's learning and it performs better. But I think the broader issue is that whenever you really kind of start betting on meta ads, and you start seeing success, and you start seeing money flow back and are like, okay, my advertising is working and I can trace it, they change the algorithm in a way that just feels like it's catastrophic, or they change the interface, or they change what you can and can't control. And I've just come to the conclusion, like, at the cadence that I can operate at, where it's something I can check in every week, every 2 weeks, and spend a couple hours on, it's starting to just not make sense. So we pulled back a ton of money out of meta ads.
What were you spending?
I have to think. I mean, our total ad budget was down to probably like $9,000 a month PPC. And
It's still
I'd say-
huge.
yeah, and
for our
probably
size.
6 of that was on Meta. Yeah. Well, in theory, most like CPAs will tell you to spend like 16% of revenue on advertising, but
I guess
no one follows that in a service business.
And you have a product base, so you see the those dollars hitting your account much faster. Where
Hmm.
I might get a lead, and then 3 years later, that might actually turn into something. But
Yeah,
Instagram is not the spot for us to find leads, is what I've seen for at least our
right.
service side.
Yeah, so the other thing, I took all that money and basically poured it into optimizing Google Ads farther. Really dove deep into, especially with the like Fifth Axis and Orange Vice stuff we're carrying now. I had to do a deep dive to make sure we're not actually accidentally advertising for those things.
Oh,
Right? Because we might pay for the ad, you might click on it, and then you might go to the actual manufacturer and just purchase it from them. The So I had to go into do a deep dive into Google, figure out how to kind of separate our own products and our best selling products, the ones we want to advertise, out from everything else, and basically poured that meta budget into Google. And I'm kind of yet to see what the performance is going to look like.
yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens there. I've been just a fan of still the standard Google search ads.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just every time I go back to that, it's never groundbreaking, but it is at least a bit more predictable. It's more consistent. Knock on wood on that, but that's what we've seen.
Yeah, and the thing I'm really struggling with too is, we are moving continually up market, which is making our advertising harder and harder to track. And
What are
it's
you
easy for
classifying as upmarket?
well, one thing we did was kind of blanket. We raised all of our prices, over time, probably 35% from where they were initially, which means that it's much more difficult to sell someone, just standard hardware sales of a gripper or a vise just because they saw a Facebook ad. These are kind of industrial products you have to think about. But at the same time, we're able to ship less product and make more money. So like from a business decision, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
But in practice,
What was the timeline of that? Just I want some context there to go up that 35%.
so things have raised 35% over like the last 2 quarters. I mean, if you
Oh wow,
look at
okay.
when we sold our grippers, like initially, they were like, I think $700 to $900. And now they're $1,200 to $2,000.
Okay.
The vices have been, a little more steady, but we've just kind of gone after a more industrial market and a more industrial customer, which, as you would think, has made our advertising less effective. And it's also had, a knock-on effect that I've kind of been struggling with. One of my, I think, big concepts of moving to a product-based business was, nice, smooth, easy cash flow, hypothetically a easy business to run. And of course, now that we're moving up market, we're getting these long sales cycles. We're getting POs that are between $20,000 and $60,000 and are a lot of work to close. And we're kind of back into doing, I would say, like semi-bespoke products and turnkeys and setups that hardware is kind of maybe half the cost or less.
Yeah, it is interesting how much faster really small businesses or hobbyists purchase compared to B2B.
Yeah.
Like we've sold some of our vacuum fixture systems when it's like a hobbyist buying it, and it's like 20 minutes. Like you have a call with them, you go
Yeah.
through detail, you send them an invoice, and all of a sudden they buy it. You do that with a B2B, and it's like 2 weeks to 2 months. It is interesting.
Yeah, I think the B2B customers, they really just have to feel the pain on them before they actually make a purchase. Until it's actually obstructing something, like when you're in that seat running the business, you can just focus on whatever fire is burning. And until something is stopping you from making money, a lot of the time there's not the pain to actually, pull the trigger.
I'd even say like approval processes. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I think that's almost a bigger point of it. The pain is there, and the person that wants to buy it would buy it. The issue is they get their hand slapped if they buy the wrong thing or something
Right.
that the budget wasn't approved of. It'd be nice if there was like out of your budget, you got a 20% discretionary to just do as you
Yeah.
see best fit, kind of like Google does with your time.
Do you get any, so like some of our bigger customers, like as we've, been more and more focused on selling kind of large package and, semi-turnkeys and turnkeys, we've had some customers where, they'll write a PO and it has all these crazy terms and, maybe we have to negotiate the terms to something reasonable. Maybe we can't send them a Google Drive. We have to go through their, bespoke system that is all, they invite you to send a document. Do you run into that a lot?
Yeah, legal's a real cost in our business.
Yeah.
I'd say on average, I have to budget $5,000 just in legal fees to close most projects.
Yeah.
So having a client that just continues to buy on that original SOW is very real, or not SOW, the consulting agreement or
Right.
service agreement, whatever you want to classify it as. Uh, yeah, it's usually $5,000. I'd say I've seen up to like $15,000 just in legal fees to close a deal. And it's like
Yeah.
just make up your mind. Let's stop going back and forth. We're arguing over commas and word
Hmm.
choices, not technicality of this contract anymore.
Yeah, and that's I guess part of the challenge that we're starting to run into is like now that I think we're dealing with bigger clients, the sales cycle has extended out. I've been kind of whining about the sine wave of our cash flow for a while now. I think it's only exacerbated that issue. But then on top of that, we're starting to get into this gray area where it's not a $500,000 project where there's a detailed where it's going back and forth between legal, but it's also not small enough that people can kind of say whatever. So we're in this weird gray area where just like trying to nail down the scope of work on a project can be a challenge to get everybody happy to close the deal.
How do you make it not as custom? Would kind of be my question to that, because even on our custom machines, air quote on
Right.
that, we've gotten to the point where like all right, our safety section is which boxes do you want to check? Do you want to put this type of fencing around it? Do you want to have thumb buttons to start it? Do you want uh, certain light curtains? How do you want to manage then your HMI? How do you want to manage the way that your frame's built? Because there's been times where like, all right,
Hmm.
a customer decides they want a weldment later on in the project. It's like, all right, we already procured the extrusion. That's
Sure.
fine.
Yeah.
We understand that happens, but that is an ECO now. How do we have that conversation earlier? Because I don't like doing ECOs as much as the customer, because that means the machine's on our floor longer. We're not making the revenue on that machine like you normally should. But so it's really educating that customer through that, and then just defining the boxes further is what we've seen. And then even down to like our software now on our machines, that's what we're doing with that. We're building that out, and it seems to help. I've continued to try and figure out how to get paid for doing more of that initial statement of work.
Yeah.
So if you figure that out,
Yeah.
I'm all
That's
ears. But that nobody wants to pay for you drafting their statement of work, even though you're technically doing value prop. You have to just bake that into
right.
the cost of the machine and your sales.
Yeah, and when I guess there's kind of different classes of customers for us. There's the people who are going to DIY it, or follow our instructions. They're going to buy the product. They're going to read the manuals. It's very doable. They'll go and buy things through the website, and maybe we only hear from them if they need a piece of advice on what to do or what to tweak in the program templates. Then a tier up from that is our kind of standard semi-turnkey customer, which it's a very A to B to C dialed process of, we make sure the part passes, like the requirements. We go and do the whole process on our own machine. We document it. We send it to the customer. That's pretty dialed. Those come out around 20 grand. Sometimes we do one-op ones, which are like 10 grand, but really, I think most shops should be able to do them themselves. And then there's this other class of customer where they tend to be like more enterprise customers, and this is where I'm seeing more and more of our revenue come from, where it's these companies that are at least 100, sometimes several thousand employees, and they're automating something. Kind of like money is not an object. They just care about having it done, having it be the least friction, but it comes with all these different strings
Well, if money's
of
not the object, you just have to bake that cost in. Like,
well, to some extent, yeah. Um,
um,
there's just like a lot of friction that's been introduced in the process on these like more custom things. We're starting to throw a PLC on. I can't get into the details of the projects, but
no, I get
we'll
what you're saying. It's definitely the friction is very real. And
yeah.
then that's something that we've seen on our side. And it's something that I've continued to have to ask myself. And I know the team's asking themselves too, is like, all right, is this develop making this friction, or is this the customer? Like, so how do we step back and, all right, we're starting to see what all the customers are starting to ask for, what they're wanting to see. How do we change our processes so we can make their experience as seamless as possible
Right.
while making our headaches less? Like, that's kind of been our look at it, is more than likely that friction is some of our newness to the market. We're a young
Yeah.
company. We're having to grow, if you will. So you take the lumps, you improve the next time. The lumps are a
Right.
little bit smaller.
Well, yeah, and customer compliance is really something on my mind right now. Every actual install that I've been on site for, we have a pretty um, we have like a full document, our turnkey checklist the customer has to fill out. And the last three in a row, there's this line, is there any fixtures or anything mounted to your table whatsoever? And then if yes, send us a picture. Everyone has said no, the last three in a row, and every single time there's some kind of fixture plate there.
It's because you asked the question wrong. Send us a picture of
Yeah,
your table.
absolutely.
Not
Yep.
is there something there? Oh, we're gonna get that all off by the time they're
Yeah.
here. Don't worry about it. Just send us a picture of your table. Send us a picture of the table the way it'll look when we arrive. Is
Yep.
the way I'd
And
rephrase that.
yeah, and that was one thing I think on this most recent install kind of frustrated me is like, okay, well, if I would have known we were using this kind of 0 point plate, we would have brought you the adapter for, both the vise and to go straight to the table. And this could have been, a 10-minute process and dial it in. Instead we have their guys like machining into their 0 point to try to make it work last minute.
It's okay. So you're describing another similar pain that we see on our big custom machines is it's very similar to product development too, is everybody wants to skip this initial upfront scoping or steps
Right.
because you want to accelerate to the finish. At the end of the day, you end up spending more money or missing opportunities. I'm going to use an example of one that happened this week. We're scoping a project. We got all of the details on the project on how we're going to manage all the incoming and outgoing parts. It's first context, about a $1.2 million project with 3 robots in it. It's going to have 3 magazine feeders into it for taking trays of parts. Some of them are coming anodized from their supplier. They then have to put a sleeve into it. They have a set screw that gets ran and they get put onto another process where it goes downstream for case packing and a little bit more subassembly. We designed all the trays, laid everything out. I have a call trying to set up a time to go through this proposal with the owner of the company. And he goes, "Hey, did we ever send you the foam trays?" I'm like, "Oh, what foam trays?" He's like, "Oh, we have all these foam trays that we use for shipping to our anodizer." I'm like, "Oh, I'm really happy you said that now, not
Right.
like once we started this project, because that's going to potentially save you tens of thousands of dollars." And a prime example of why in this large of statement of work, you're going to see that we're charging 2.5% for us to come on site to actually finalize your statement of work, because we want to verify that we're scoping the highest value solution for your business. And that seemed to be received fairly well. But again, it's scope of project. And then with that, we're going to do an entire automation assessment for their entire business while we're there as part of that kind of as a relationship builder to scale it up. But had I not he randomly had the idea, "Hey, did we send you the foam trays?" I can't remember. Like just mid conversation, and we just scoped it the way we would have a couple of years ago, we would have missed that opportunity. We'd probably been there a year and a half in the future delivering
Right.
the machine being like, "Oh man, we missed an opportunity here."
Hmm. Yeah, and I think part of the challenge is like as my business is evolving, the first thing that I kind of recognize is first off, I don't even know what our close rate is, because I don't know how many of these proposals that we sent out 3-4 months ago that we're still following up on and are just kind of getting pushed off of like, "Oh, we're not ready. How many of those are just dead deals of customers who will just say, "Hey, we're not going to do this," and how many of those might actually come back? Because we see some of these big projects come back 8, 9, 10 months later. So I don't know what our close rate is. And then
I have a stale ratio on that. If the customer is not active, or I don't think the momentum stopping on it, I move it into a stale bucket.
Mhm.
And then if it's stale for X number of months, I forget what I have it set at, it automatically just goes into a lost lead. And if they come back, it
Right.
goes back in the new lead bucket.
Yeah.
So that's been the way I've found around it. Given your sales cycle, I think anything over a year needs to be killed. It was a lost deal.
Yeah. Well, more what I mean is like the kind of our two marquee products, being the line load and the intro load system, that have are new to the market now, and I think we first started quoting them out in the kind of mid-December. So I don't have any real data there
I
for
see where your pain is.
what our close rate is. Moving up market for us has been something that's been the last 2.5 quarters kind of ongoing. So I'm still trying to figure out what the issue is. And as far as scope of work goes, I think the challenge with us, if I don't know what our close rate is, I don't know how much effort to put into these SOWs and also, you kind of have this chicken and egg problem of, did you not win that deal because your scope of work wasn't, narrowed in enough? Or did you not, were you never going to win that deal no matter how much time you put into it?
Yeah, and sometimes it's speed of response is what I've seen
Right.
too. Like it's amazing. You can have some deals when they're hot, like all of a sudden
Yeah.
that customer's
100%.
wanting to engage. You've got to be on it. You've got to be responding like within 24 hours, like updating their SOW. I mean, it's another good example of that sales cycle is
Hmm.
I was at a customer's facility yesterday meeting with the COO, and he's going, "Hey, I want to come down and see your facility and do a tour before we potentially pull the trigger on this." I'm like, "All right, well,
Yep.
we've got an interesting thing. The first week of March, I'm going to be out." And then the guy at the table's like, "Well, I'm out all of next week." And
Yeah.
then they're like, "Oh, so we're looking at middle of March when we need to be starting this to hit the timeline." I'm like, "Well, we've got tomorrow and Friday." And we look at the calendar, and one guy's like,
Yeah.
"I can't come Friday." And it's like, "All right, I guess it's 3:15 right after this is when we're meeting, which is 24 hours." So I was at their facility yesterday. They're going to be here, but and when customers want to move, you have to just, I mean, I moved a lot of things around on my calendar to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's still what I'm trying to figure out. And, we still have depending on the month, between, I don't know, 30 and 50% of our revenue coming in from consulting, which is something I'm kind of looking to trail off. But
It's 30% seems like a reasonable number in my opinion. Like our numbers trailed off a lot on consulting. Like we're down to like under 10%.
yeah.
And to flatten out those waves, I wish we were closer to a 20% in complete
Right.
transparency. And I've been chasing a few more of those consultancy or time and materials, but we're also getting maintenance on machines now that's ramping up because we've got more machines in the field. So that time and materials might just backfill itself because of deployments.
Yeah, and I keep coming. I know we kind of threw out the structure this week, I guess, but
Well, we're still on
the
sales. It's just a really long sales cycle.
yeah. I heard this quote on, I think, the Incremental podcast, which was like, there's something along the lines of, "There's no such thing as failure, just an interpretation of missed expectations." And that quote really stuck with me, because I think I've been kind of pining for growth, and saying, how do we get bigger? How do we get bigger? How do I grow the automation business to have surpassed where my machining business was when I started kind of intentionally killing it. And I think that kind of shifted my perspective to say, hey, like, I've grown the automation business a huge amount over the course of the couple years that it's existed, and made me think, hey, maybe I should slow down, really optimize. So, but I think in broader strokes, I'm still trying to figure out, like, what size do I want to be? How fast do I want to get there? And do I want to be a bootstrap company? Do I want to raise capital and try to light the rocket ship underneath me? And I just I'm trying to find a steady answer. It feels like every month I have a different opinion about what I should do, and kind
I'll
of
give
keep
you my last opinion on this topic.
yeah.
Maybe not last opinion because I'm sure this will come up and I want to help answer them. But I think you just need to make a decision, Michael. I don't
Hmm.
think it's going to matter which one as long as you pick one and you stick to it, rather than
Sure. Yeah.
bouncing between, I think I want to go VC, I think I want to bootstrap. I mean, make a pros cons list. I mean, my dad would make me do this all the time as a kid when I'd be like, I don't know what I want to do. And he's like, here's a piece of paper,
Yeah.
Matt. Just start writing. And he just like very little patience did my dad have. And it's like, I think that's what I just do is a pros cons list, Michael, and figure out which one aligns and what's right for your business and you. It's,
Right.
is your business going to be a good VC where you're going to business where you're going to get the multiple you want? I don't know.
Yeah,
So.
and I don't know what the answer is yet, and I think part of it is I keep kind of running incidentally into these opportunities of um people kind of wanting to buy a portion of the business, and then I say to myself, okay, that's interesting,
Yeah,
and then
you're
I don't really push it, but this is the second or third time that this has come around, and yeah, you're
okay.
right. I need to actually really
You're
get my arms around it.
you're running into a similar thing that I had a couple years ago when I started with the Merlin Mentors group. I kept having
Hmm.
other businesses reaching out to me wanting to sell their business.
Okay.
Like, hey, we're a comparable size automation integrator as you are today, 10, 12 person shops.
Right.
We want to get out. We want to exit. Or a CNC machine shop. We want to sell. We want to exit. I actually had just another one come in the last 2 weeks here, and it's the thing that my advisors told me was you have to pick a date, Matt, and you're not looking at any of those deals until that date. And what you say is your advisors told you couldn't look at these because you have X checklist items to get done first. And that's what I
Yep.
did. And everybody respected me. I'm like, I can't talk to you right now. If you're still trying to sell in 6 months, I will be reaching back out. I reached out to some of them. Some of them had sold. Some of them just like kind of dwindled down or closed
Sure.
out the doors kind of
Yep.
because they're like, yeah, we didn't have a business to sell. It was like literally just letting that person wait to kind of helped them make the decision of what we would have reached anyways.
Right.
But
Yeah, that's I've definitely taken more of a passive role than I should. I think you're definitely right there.
yeah, it's I don't know if it's something you want to, because I'll
Yeah.
give another line they said too, because there was one deal that I really wanted to chase, and they flat out said you need to go in and you need to have one meeting because they're gonna yank you around. You have one meeting with them, you listen, you go through the process, you come back, you make your list, kind of your pros, cons of what you want. You go into the second meeting and you say exactly what you're willing to do to move forward. And if those don't align with that person, you walk out the room. And that's
Yeah.
what I did. We couldn't come to an alignment. I'm like, for it to work for me, I
Sure.
have to have these things. If that's a non-starter for you, let's go get a beer.
Right.
And that's basically what we did.
Yep.
I don't know. And they didn't get mad. It was interesting. I thought being that brutally honest or blunt would kind of ruffle some feathers, if you will. But those people took it really well. They're like, we get it. You got to do what's right for your business. And I thought it was well received. And I still talk to them. I just not looking to buy their business.
Yeah, for sure. Well, should we move on to the next section?
Yeah, I think so. Engineering and R&D. I think that's a great one for you to kick off, as always.
Well, there hasn't been much engineering slash R&D. I guess one thing that I did think a lot about, I think I mentioned that one customer who we had brought in, he flew down to see the intro load. Kind of where we landed was, he's like, okay, well, I need to see 24 pallets. And that was something that we had kind of envisioned a different version that we had scheduled kind of Q3, Q4 than what he was really looking for, which was kind of, he had envisioned some kind of chain thing. My team was kind of going back and forth, is it worth it if we can build one of these, break even, bring it to the, to the market earlier? And after a lot of thought about it, I kind of decided, well, first off, this is probably just the wrong decision to go and build this system. And after a little bit more thought, I kind of looked at what was on the horizon and what we were actually planning to do kind of Q3, Q4, which was, a kind of cell much more similar to like an Aroa robot where there's kind of a central rotating axis.
Yeah, those are great systems.
Yeah. And we had actually designed one and put it on pause when, we had a lot of our consulting revenue fall out from underneath us and kind of had to rapidly shrink from, like 14 to 8 people. And I realized, okay, the plan was just to rebuild or to finish out this existing project that was already, 30% down the line. We should stick to that plan. And kind of where we landed was, okay, I'm going to propose that we build this early. And if he's not interested, then, we'll move on. And, that guy can buy a Trinity or a RoboJob or whatever he might want.
Yeah, I think that's a sound decision. We've tried doing those projects that you run the math and you're like, if I break even and I have this IP, it's going to be a great idea.
Yeah.
What I've come to find out is the times that those are going to work is if it's a real good relationship builder. It's not just this person needs one of these. It's we get this done, we do it right. I see 4 machines in the future.
Right. Yeah.
With that customer is what I like. I don't have to go out
Yeah.
and sell anything else because those $5,000 to $10,000 legal fees are real.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably very true. So, we'll see where that goes on, right now I think I need to keep I need to stay focused and keep in mind, like right now I need to get these intro loads, out the door. We need to get them, figure out which customers we're selling them to, and make sure that those customers 100% succeed and are taken care of.
Do you ever do like take your entire client list that you've sold to that are your target markets or like the ones, these were great to work with? Do you ever just make a list of those and then try and fill out like what industries did they service? What size were they? Like, were they 25 million in revenue, X number of employees? They were in the aerospace industry. who did you sell to? Did you sell
Right.
to the engineering director manager? Do you ever run those data points? Those have been insightful for me when I've built out those spreadsheets.
You know what I've really seen is like, there's the initial sales process, and we'll close a sale, and generally the point of contact, once we close the sale, will have been one of maybe the three or four people that were involved in the initial kind of walk through and sales process, and they
Hmm.
probably had some say in whether the deal closed or not, depending on the size of the company. And really our success, I think, has always come down to who is that point of contact. Do they have, are they realistic? Are they, honest? Are they, doing the things that they said they're going to do? Especially for something like a semi turnkey. And I would say 95% of the time it's great, and the 5% of the time, that point of contact maybe isn't doing their job or doesn't have the domain knowledge. Those are the ones that are really hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, who's the decision maker if there's three to four of
Yeah.
them, identifying the job title of that, because that's critical
Well,
for
that's
running
the
ads and searches.
challenge, though, is that
Okay.
the decision maker who's going to say yes or no, and then send it to procurement to or purchasing to actually pay for the thing, is not the same person that is going to drive as we work together if we succeed in the project. Typically I would say that maybe there's a manufacturing, like the director of manufacturing or something,
Yeah.
or a smaller shop, it might be like the shop foreman. It's typically not the president of the company.
No, but there's a
And
there's a
then
internal champion, and
yeah,
then there's
yeah,
the decision maker is what we see in
yep,
our sales cycle.
right,
So the internal champion is the first one. You gotta put the SOW, and then you gotta
hmm,
get one meeting with the decision
yeah,
maker. Is what I've come to realize. Like, if you don't get that one meeting throughout the sales cycle, the odds of that project going to close is very low. Like, we've had
right,
projects where it's like, man, this is a slam dunk. The ROI is there, our prices are solid, but I only worked with the manufacturing engineer to scope out the
right.
project, and I never got the operations manager, the person that decided. Our proposal then
Hmm.
went in with three others, and I'm assuming one of those other three got that meeting,
Yeah,
and I didn't.
right. Well, I think one thing too that's kind of unique about us, like we're generally like for something like the intro load, yeah, sure, like customers might just compare it like, am I going to buy a robo job or am I going to buy this? But for something like the gripper automation, like the semi turnkeys, usually we're a pretty unique product offering where it's like, you're looking at a $20,000 system and your alternative is maybe $100,000 turnkey through an integrator, right? So there is kind of that differentiation, which puts us in a unique spot. Um, but yeah, generally speaking, I think it really, in terms of the point of contact, whether or not that engineer really knows what they're talking about, and is on your side. I mean, that's kind of a big one we've seen.
That's a huge part. You've got to, like, there has to be some synergy there.
Well, we've been able to close almost in spite of maybe the point of contact before. Bless you. You sneezed for the people who can't who didn't see. Um, there have definitely been times that on a semi turnkey or on a project, the person who's actually the decision maker is like, yeah, we're doing this. And maybe the manufacturing engineer isn't happy about that, and or because they wanted to buy a robot or whatever. And I would say most of the time they get on board and help us to succeed. Every once in a while, there's some guy that we is our point of contact that just wants the project to fail, and generally then we try our best. But so far, like the two times that's happened, we ended up just going above their heads, kind of saying, hey, like I'll show you.
Were you able to make
Yeah.
those sales when you did that?
Well, we had already sold the
Okay.
issue was that the decision
Thank.
maker was the person who was for the project, and then almost our point of contact was like actively sabotaging it and wanted us to fail. And then
That's
they
interesting.
yeah.
It's an interesting, because I've seen where you have one person in the mix that doesn't have the power to say yes, but they have the power to say no.
Right.
And so that's what you were describing there. And I've always been afraid to just leapfrog
No,
corporate
well, we don't
ladder, if you
start
will.
there. We really, really try. And it has to get to the point where we've run into maybe our point of contact doesn't know how to dial in a vice onto the machine table,
That's a problem.
and like okay, at a certain point we have to say like this isn't reasonable. Like it's not our fault. You can't dial in a vice. Like we were very clear what what a semi-turnkey is and isn't.
I'm
And
surprised. Like, there's people setting up machines that don't know how to set a vise.
yeah, one time our point of contact changed because the guy got fired,
Yeah,
and it went from being a complete nightmare to like a super easy, smooth sailing project,
oh,
literally overnight.
that's awesome. I've never
For
seen it.
everyone but the guy, yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. Man, that's an easy video though. How to set a vise. I mean,
yeah,
hammer, indicator, magnet,
right,
bang.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is, I think everyone always they all of our point of contacts always, I think, seem initially good, and then we run into challenges in interesting places. One time we had a customer who like didn't understand they had to like put air into the solenoid kits, and another time we had a customer who just like didn't plug in the 12-volt power supply, and and then we have customers like we'll do a turnkey, and I question why they even bought a turnkey or a semi-turnkey, because they will just go and do everything themselves, look through the documentation, and skip all the meetings and just succeed. So man, I really see the full breadth from.
We've seen that too. It varies. Some people just they want more hand holding, and that just comes down
Yeah,
to your service basis. I mean, we just had a service call come in where our machine it won't run, nothing's powering up. Oh, really? Can you take a picture of the controls cabinet for us? None of the VFDs are powered. Can you check to make sure none of the e-stops are pressed? And we didn't hear
yeah,
back for like 2 days. We then heard back, yeah, the e-stop on the HMI was pushed in. But I mean, that's their first custom automation equipment. I think it's their first machine with an e-stop in their facility. They run a lot
right,
of old presses that they're having some safety changes in there, which they're doing a
right,
good job of putting guarding on that now that they're going through and changing stuff. But they're just not used to some of those things, and it's like, all right, that then goes back to, all right, how do we continue to just educate our customers? Because we spend 5 days on site. How do we make those 5 days as impactful as possible so we get less of those odd questions in the later days
right.
or deployments?
Yeah, and I think what's hard for me is I always want the customers to succeed so badly,
Oh yeah,
and
it's not
walking
good
that
if they don't.
line. Yeah, of course, but like walking that line of when the customer is just pushing too hard. Like you might be on site installing one thing, and then they try to pull you aside and are like, "Hey, come look at this other thing that's totally unrelated. Think you could help me install it?" No. But there's always going to be little challenges in figuring out where to draw the line. And for me, I'm still kind of in the process of systemizing that, creating a clear kind of set of rules that are discussed more thoroughly up front. And I guess I'm kind of aware I'm going to bear some of the pain of that at the front end as we still kind of dial in our processes.
Yeah, I think you're just feeling some of that early integrator pains.
Yeah.
They're very real. They're very expensive.
Yeah.
You're gonna get through them.
Yeah. And I mean, that's as our business model evolves, that's a whole other kind of can of worms of, we've been geared up to, with something like the semi-turnkeys, do them with external integrators. We have a whole process set up so that we
Yeah,
can
we've
just
talked
sell the
about that a
hardware.
little bit.
Oh
Yeah, we've
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about doing that potentially. I mean, if you have
Um,
something in Wisconsin, I'm not against helping you out, Michael.
yeah.
So you let me
um,
know.
yeah. But that's a whole process. And, for at least right now, like the intra load and the line load, we're only doing them as turnkeys that we're handling. And I still have the question of whether that's something that we should change and go to distributors to actually handle the installs so that less and less of our business is getting it
I,
onto the machine and making it work.
I think you need to handle that until your documentation is as
Oh, I know.
simple
Yeah.
that you can have a high schooler do it. I think that's where you need to be.
Yeah. And that's an interesting challenge too that is really on my mind of, I think about something like, Haas's or DN's documentation. And it's so dialed that they can really have, techs that might not be at a super high skill level, be able to follow the step-by-step instructions, make the thing happen, and, walk out in a reasonable amount of time. Of course, we don't have that same, economy of scale, to where we can create all of that documentation to that level, which kind of, has the pinching effect on any small business of, to have the product be profitable, you wanted to have it be more expensive, which is
But
why a lot of things end up being kind of niche.
and I might argue that you do have the budget to create it because what's happening is you're paying for it in nickel and dimes by
Right.
painfully going through the integrations. Where if you just put that into your product development process, like we don't release a product until we have the manual documented, or at least
Hmm.
we've put these metrics in of X number of hours to get these points done. I mean, it takes for a big custom machine, it's not uncommon for us to have 150 plus hours just into the manual drafting.
Right.
So I don't know for a product side, maybe that's a 40 to an 80 hour for something like yours. And then you can get a template built out. And then as you build out more of them in the future, it gets down to like 40 to 60. But I think that should just be part of your process.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess really I'm trying to figure out like, I've figured out what our product basis is. I kind of know what we're selling, but there's still the question of like who we are. Are we an OEM? Are we an integrator? Right now we're kind of both. And
Yeah.
what's the right business model long term? And
Do you
it's
have to
hard to
pick
answer
on that?
right now.
Yeah. Do you have to pick on that one right now?
No, but it's just on my mind.
Yeah.
Of
Okay.
yeah,
That's a good question. Yeah. The OEM versus the integrator there. Because, yeah, if you go down the distribution model, you'll have to pull back on the integrator, would be my thought,
right.
because otherwise you're competing with your downstream market.
Yeah, and we already have a bit of a setup there where we just kind of give account ownership to our distributors. So, if one of the accounts that has, been reported as like a confirmed lead from that distributor tries to buy through us, we just refund them and tell them, please purchase through your distributor. So we're able
Oh,
to
okay.
kind of walk that balance a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds
But
great.
yeah, it works really well. And that way we don't have to like geo lock distributors or anything, and don't have to get exclusive distribution. But yeah, it can be. It'll probably become more of a challenge to maintain something like that when we have more than one or two distributors actually moving any real volume.
Yeah, that will be an interesting one. I'll be curious to see how that goes.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that was your engineering and R&D. I really don't have a lot of engineering and
Yeah.
R&D as kind of normal for develop lately based on what we've been trying to do. Ours has been more on company-wide updates and improvements. Really, we executed this last week. We've had the one customer on site for another kind of ECO discussion. We wanted their machine running for that discussion. We had multi-robots running for their machine, which is really cool to see. It running at like putting parts in a box every 4.5 seconds, picking the boxes up, erecting them,
Hmm.
pallet. Like it was awesome to see their entire line running. But that was really the extent of it, is executing for that, getting the details. There's a lot of details that go into getting one of those machines ready for a site visit. And then another machine that's just going into the software side of things. Team's just been executing on those, and it's been awesome to see that.
Yep.
I guess the next one is company-wide updates and improvements. Do you have any big ones you want to cover?
Well, I guess I keep thinking in terms of, and I keep kind of wrapping back to like, okay, what's our business model and what are we doing long term? Because part of it is, I guess I'm kind of always living, 6 months in the future or maybe 2 years in the future. I don't
You
know.
should be. You need to always
Yeah.
be looking there.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of why I keep whining about, okay, are we a OEM or are we a distributor? Are we going to bootstrap or are we going to raise money? Are we this? Are we that? And I think I'm just trying to figure out really where I want to take the company. Next week, I'm off from like, Wednesday, obviously through the weekend. So I think that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around to figure out like, what direction am I moving towards? In the last months, we've been really focused on, improving Kanban, improving, our production, optimizing like how much we're spending on bolts. But I think right now I'm really trying to optimize on, okay, what direction are we going? How long do I want it to take to get there? And yeah, I'm just kind of taking the last couple of weeks to figure out what is the revamp 2025 vision for the company.
Yeah. That's a tough decision. I know we
Yeah.
kind of circled back here. I'd look at it in the comments of what's right for the business, and then the one that kind of comes after that is what does Michael want? Like at the end
Yep.
of the day, Michael, this is, as far as I'm aware, you own all of gimbal automation, and
Hmm.
it's really your life that is fueling it, if you will.
Yeah.
Make sure to think about what the right thing is for your long-term goals. Like, do you want a lifestyle business? Do you want this to become huge and sell it? Do you want to continue it to be around but not running it? You just want to be, I know you've brought up the R&D. So how do you create that future like kind of goal of what your life kind of looks like, and then have the business fuel some of that, maybe would be
Yeah.
kind of a way I'd look at that. Um, just knowing how much you want to get into the R&D side, I think there's some ways you could look at that.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways I could look at it, and I just need to, I think, really be serious about figuring it out because it's been kind of a background problem as I've been fighting fires, and this one's been smoldering a bit too long.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
You're gonna figure it out. I think
Yeah.
it's just you got to pick one, and maybe it's one of those where you pick that direction for 12 months, and you can pivot again in another 12 months. You can say, no, this isn't quite what I thought the future would look like for me.
Right.
I think I want to go down that other road. But maybe just pick a date that I'm sticking in this lane till, you know, 220 of 27 or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I guess one big improvement. We have two shops. When we were at 14 people, it made a little bit more sense. Now we have kind of 6 people in one shop and like 2 in the other. I did just make the decision, like we're pulling the water jet over to the bigger shop. We have the room
Oh,
for
wow.
it. Um,
That's a huge
the
decision. Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's positive.
we have that gantry mill that really we used when we were doing a lot of like art contract manufacturing. I made the decision like, okay, we're gonna sell it. It's a $250,000 machine. We'll probably only get 20 grand back because we have a loan on it still. And we're just gonna, even though we have or a year left in the lease in our smaller shop, we're just probably gonna get out of that space because I really want the energy back. Getting everyone back into one space, kind of move everybody in the same direction.
I
And
think
honestly, I
you're
think we can get to like 20 people in the current space. Without needing to have another 5,000 square feet.
I think you're going to really see a cultural shift because of that. Because
Yeah.
I know when we were running out of my basement still, and then we were running out of the lease space, we just didn't have the spaces. We were in a weird position. We were kind of similar to what you're talking about, and we had people just isolated. It wasn't cool. It
Right.
wasn't good for our culture. They weren't involved in conversations. Nobody was left out intentionally, but people were left out
Right.
of conversations. And so bringing everybody back, I think there was serious cohesion that occurred, which was nice to see.
Yep. So I guess that's a pretty big improvement
Yeah, that's
change.
huge. I'm really
Yeah.
happy to hear that one. I think you're gonna
Yep.
really like that decision.
But yeah, I mean it's a pain to move a water jet, it turns out, and it's a pain to sell a gantry mill. But those are things we're gonna do.
Okay. Yeah. What is the gantry? What are you trying to get for the gantry mill? You want to try and sell it right on the podcast?
I don't know. I just want to get close to what we should get for it. I don't know what that number is. I just don't want to be the big thing. I don't want to be upside down on it for sure. I don't
Is
think
it,
we are.
what is it? Cat 40, 15,000 RPM.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so standard
20
Haas.
tool changer.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's that weird Haas gantry router that's halfway between a mill and a router.
Is that
Um,
all open bed, or does it have sheet metal around it?
it's like half and half. Like there's like sheet metal that like goes with the gantry to like kind of enclose it.
Oh, okay.
It's a very bizarre machine. It runs coolant. We
Oh,
mostly
it
ran
does.
stainless and aluminum on it. Yeah. It's geared towards metal. Like if you were going and just doing aluminum all day, like that would be an awesome machine. If you're doing like steel hogging or whatever, you really want to probably step up in rigidity.
Interesting. Okay. And you said
But
that was
yeah,
like 250,000 out of the gate to get that thing?
I don't know. I honestly don't even remember what we paid for it. It was somewhere between 250 and 300.
Okay. And it was like a 5 by 10 bed or something?
Yeah, it's 5 by 10 feet.
Okay.
But we just, honestly, we can, a lot of our designs kind of water jet and tongue and groove together. Like the only benefit I guess we're getting out of the gantry mill is like I guess we can like counterbore it, and it looks a little bit nicer. But is it worth having $250,000 of capital tied up?
Yeah, you can
Not
button
really.
head a lot of things
Exactly.
for a quarter
Yeah.
million bucks.
Yeah. Well, and that's another process, right? It's not exactly lean to go from you could have had a button head there to now we're going to put this whole secondary operation to mill a bunch of counterbores. You just probably tripled or quadrupled the part cost.
Yeah, that's a very real hit
Yeah.
there. Okay.
So, yeah, those are decisions I probably should have made a while ago, but I'm glad to have made.
Yeah, you talked. I mean, that didn't take you long. You talked about that maybe a couple months ago that that was something you were considering. I think
Hmm.
you probably took the right timeline to figure that out.
Yeah,
I don't think I don't think you need to beat yourself up too hard there, Michael.
I'm always too hard on myself. It's a trend.
Yeah, that is a theme of a lot of entrepreneurs. So
Yep.
I get it. As I said at the beginning, kind of how I was feeling for the week, everything just kind of chugging along is the wrong word, but it seems like develops kind of, it's hitting this flow, which has been, I don't want to say comfortable because I hate the word comfort
Sure.
because that is like,
Yeah.
comfort's the silent killer of all things, I feel like. And, but it seems like the team, we've got a process that's working well for getting our sales proposals out. We've got machines that are going through on the build and design phase very nicely. Our communications with really all our customers, I'm happy with right now. Like we went through some challenges of the growth over the last year, but just overall communication across the board's been good and just seeing some really good stride across the team because of some big changes we've made in the last 6 to 8 months here. And then now it seems like we're going after a lot of these incremental changes. Like, all right, we're
Right.
just tuning this, tuning that, but it really doesn't get in the way of the day to day. We literally just execute those things because we're in the process of doing something else now, which is really kind of a good feeling. It doesn't feel like we're constantly just paying to get to where we need to be.
Yep.
So that's kind of back onto that my general feelings of the week, but that's been what it is. I don't have one big company wide improvement I want to talk about or change we've done. It just I'm seeing the team just take action on things that are in their way on their day to day. They're collaborating among each other. Like, hey, this process broke that we built in the last 6 months, and something got through to manufacturing that never should have. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's our process's fault. Let's figure it out so it doesn't happen
Right.
again. Like hearing those conversations when I walk through the office, like I just smile. Like I love it.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
So yeah, that's really it for company wide improvements. So my little tidbit.
Yeah. Well, you do the big things and then the little things.
Yeah, that's I guess how it flows. Yeah. All right. Do you want to cover anything for company wide improvements further?
No,
You
I think I'm
sold the
good there.
gantry. What did you
Well,
Google this? What did you Google this week?
um, I don't even know. Um, the not much. I mean, I think I've just been kind of in my head trying to figure out, what I want. And then, dealing with all of the shipping drama. Oh, like one improvement I learned, we're not booking flights. I don't care how much money we save until we know that crate has landed. Whenever that's definitely an improvement.
Yeah, it sounds like a solid decision.
But what
Uh,
about you? What have you been Googling?
I'm in that same boat. I was looking through what I Googled since we had our last podcast. I apparently have not asked Google a lot of questions now that I have Copilot on my side here a
Hmm.
little bit for my kind of in the tools that I'm using box. Otherwise, everything was like looking at this customer's proposal, looking at inbox or email responses, HubSpot. Like everything was just executing on my side and working with the team. So it's really weird. I was like, I didn't look for anything this week. What is going on? Did I not do anything? We're kind of coming to the end here. The last bit is something personal. You want to cover something about Michael this week, Michael?
We saw my parents because
Okay.
the install's pretty close, so at least there's something to do down in Denver while we're while I was waiting for the machine to show up. Um, and I guess I'm excited to kind of take a mini vacation next week. We're gonna go up to Mammoth, try to take a little bit of R&R and figure out what the next steps for Gimbal are.
That's going to be fun. If you want to text me or call me kind of offline with that, if you want to brain dump, or I don't know if you have Voxer, I'm all ears. I want to
Hmm.
help you figure out what you want, Michael. So something about Matt this week. I always have a jump rope in my office. It's a weird like energy booster that I do. Like if I feel like I've just been staring at my screen for too long, I just go out and jump rope. It's a weird thing I do in the shop. So that's I don't know. It's lived for like the last 5 years. I had one in the basement. I kind of stopped it for a little bit there, and then once we moved to our new facility a couple years ago, it kind of came back. So it's I don't know, weird little tidbit. I like jumping rope to get my energy back during the day.
That's kind of hilarious.
It's a
I
weird
would
thing.
have never guessed. Yeah.
All right. So, little fun thing about Matt, but
Cool.
yeah, I guess we can wrap it there.
I'm just imagining you like doing the doubles,
Not
like double
quite like
dutch.
that. Have you ever done like the weighted ropes? Those are fun too.
I
Those
haven't
hurt when
jumped
you miss.
rope since I was 12, Matt.
Oh, it's great. It's one heck of
Yep.
like gets your heart rate up and like nothing flat. I don't know. I love it.
Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.